And the stream has gone live. Let's see if we've got a stream on YouTube before we get fully started here. We do. We have a stream on YouTube. All right. There, for all of my indomitable fans out there. We got that working. That. And let's bring it up. There we go. Everybody see that okay? Excellent. Little by little. That's what happens when you can't be ready when you expect to be. You fall a little behind and get slightly flustered. All right, well, thanks everyone for coming out. I really appreciate it. Small as the group is, although I think 16 more registered this afternoon, so seems to be typical of Meetup. That's okay. In 6 months' time, though, to let people know, I'm going to be killing the Meetup group. It's $98 every 6 months for the Meetup group, for me to manage and run the Meetup group. And I'm going to abandon it in 6 months. And I'm going to run it strictly through my website at WP Plugins A to Z. And I'll have the calendar there, everything else. We'll bring all the stuff from Meetup over to that, because I'll probably get the same responses and it won't cost me $100 every 6 months. Welcome to the presentation tonight. And what I'm doing here is this is a presentation that covers not only WordPress, but ClasicPress. If you haven't heard about ClasicPress, ClasicPress is a WordPress clone. It's been in existence for just over a year now, and it's growing quite rapidly. And it is something that I have a really good belief in, considering the troubles I've had in the WordPress community and many other people. There's developers right now. A minor thing, I was working with a developer, reviewed his plugin for membership. The WordPress code hosting place, the WordPress repository, treated him so badly, he pulled his code down from there and he's abandoning WordPress because of how badly he was treated. And he had this fantastic plugin. Fortunately, he's going to continue developing it and maybe move it towards ClasicPress. So at any rate, what I'm going to be covering tonight, though, is doing audits on a WordPress website and a ClasicPress website. Real briefly myself, John Overall. I do run a WordPress website on one part, and as of yesterday, my WP Plugins A to Z website is now ClasicPress and fully operational and launched. So I'm liking how all that works. But what I'm going to be talking tonight about is how to run an audit on your website and the things you need to do for your website. And this is an important thing to do for your websites at least annually, to make sure your hosting is still up to speed, make sure you haven't got some plugins that have gotten old and decrepit that need replaced, or some other problems are happening in your website that you might not be aware of. So, site auditing for something in the middle of my screen. Site auditing for WordPress and ClasicPress. One of the first things you're going to want to start dealing with on it is base security. Dealing with the base security is the most important thing, and it amazes me how many sites I inherit or pick up or look at that haven't even dealt with their base security. And base security being something as simple as an SSL certificate. Not everyone has those yet, although it's been 2 years since Google mandated them. More and more people are getting them. But I still run into the ones, and in particular, if they're hosted with GoDaddy. GoDaddy doesn't give away free certificates like 95% of all the web hosts out there. Every web host out there, myself as a hosting company, free certificates are literally free. They don't cost me anything. They don't cost any hosting provider anything for a basic certificate. But yet GoDaddy still insists upon charging people $75 a year for this basic certificate. You know, at one time it was a big money maker. I remember making lots of money off SSL certificates, but that day is gone. So this is one of the first things you'll want to check out on your website. Making sure that your base SSL is done. Is it set up and is it running correctly? I find that a lot of people that have SSL set up on their site don't even have it set up correctly. What they haven't done is they converted their website over from non-SSL to SSL, but they didn't do it the proper way. There is a way to do it so that your site is secure, and there's a way to do it that is a cheater's way. And I used the cheater's way myself in the beginning. use a plugin to do redirects, or I dropped in a short snippet of code, caused redirects. I didn't go in through the database and fix everything in there. That works for a little while, but pretty soon you start having problems with website performance. Your site slows down, people can't get anything done. It breaks, all kinds of things happen. So that is one of the first things you'll want to do, is look at that. Another thing you have to look at is your plugins. What plugins are installed on your site? And I have a link here in the notes. If you want to get these notes for me, send me an email. I'll happily give them up to you. But a link in here for a plugin called Vendy Abandoned Plugin Check. What this plugin does for you is when you install it, it makes a list in your plugins. Next to it, it makes notations. It tells you how long it has been since the plugin author updated that plugin, according to the WordPress repository at any rate. If you have a third-party plugin, they can't tell you how long it's been. You just have to do that by talking to the developer. But if the plugin's gotten to be 2 or 3 years old, either it's very, very stable, which there are a couple out there, not very many. I still use a couple of plugins that are 4 years old, never been updated, and they're very solid. But most plugins, after a couple of years, security holes are found, issues are found, it's not compatible with PHP 7.3, etc., etc. So you'll want to look and see what the state is of your plugins on your site. Next thing you'll want to take a look at is your database health. And your database health is something that is really important, especially if you've gone a few years, if your website's more than a couple, 3 years old, and you've installed and removed plugins and installed and removed plugins. Well, not all plugins clean up their mess when they leave. In other words, there's lots of plugins you install, they create tables and data entries into your database. If you uninstall those plugins, they leave all that mess behind. It leaves you with a bloated database, a database that'll slow down, and a database that's just plain over bloated for the most part. So you'll want to go through it. The other thing that happens is if you've done redevelopment over time, so you've hired developers to do it, and I admit I'm guilty of doing this myself. I'll take on a development project, and before I'll do anything, I will duplicate that website and create a second database in their hosting provider, mostly as a backup, but sometimes the second database is where I do my development for the site. When we switch to their new site, we don't always clean up the old files, and that gets left behind. Basically, all it does is takes up space in your WordPress, in your hosting provider. And not all hosting providers do it. Some do, some don't. Some charge you for the amount of space. They limit how much space you can use. There's a lot out there that say you have unlimited space, but usually they have limitations of some sort. Another thing you'll want to do is run performance checks on your site. You'll want to use GTmetrix as a performance checker, just gtmetrix.com. It's an excellent site to find out how your website is performing. You'll also want to go through and use page speed test. It is a different website. Another area you'll want to do is go into your cPanel. And just to get clear on this, where I'm going to go through these slides, after I'm done the slides, I'm going to go do some live stuff. I'm going to be bringing up a website I've looked at. I've got a sample audit report that I've done up to give you an idea on what you really want to do. Like an actual audit report, when it's completed, about 15 pages thick. And this is what I do for sites. I've even got a blank one that if you want to get the blank audit report on what you need to do, just email me. I'll happily send you the Word document. So you'll want to look for errors in your cPanel log. Log into your cPanel and go look for the errors in there. You'll want to go into your file management system through your cPanel, go into the root folder for your WordPress install, wherever it's at, and look for a file called error. Not error, it's just error. It has nothing else. It's actually a text file. And in that text file, you'll find, it's kind of a little hard to read, but you'll find like this right here. These are some errors from a error folder. And these errors here are related directly to your WordPress install. It's usually a plugin causing these errors more than anything else, but it's good to know if you're having these errors. The cPanel error log, which is a completely different error log, logs major errors that are more server related than they are website related. So there's two different error logs in here that you want to look at for your site. The initial site speed test I mentioned, you need to find out where your website is at. Now this one, well, I guess you can read it pretty good on a big screen. At least I can this close to it. You can see right up here, this was one I did on the demo site I'm going to be showing up tonight. Its initial failed it miserably. That's how bad my dev site is right now. It's so bloated with crap. It's not even a dev site, it's my sandbox. It's where I throw everything in there and see what explodes. But it failed miserably, and it's not uncommon for me to get a website to examine and find out it's a complete failure as far as speed goes and issues. And GT Metrics gives you a whole list of things to go through and suggestions on how to help clean them up and fix them. As I said, GT Metrics, pagespeedgrader.com, and webpagetest.org. These are three places I go and test at all three, and then I make screenshots of them. What this can do for you is does help you plan an attack out and figure out exactly what and where you're going to go with your website and how you're going to do it. Site audit report. So the site audit report, the report I'm going to go over here, doing most of it live, is a detailed exam of your website. It examines the root folders for WordPress. We're looking for out-of-place files and folders. We examine the htaccess file, where most of your security goes into for your website. The WP config file, which is the most critical file in your WordPress install, because that's where your credentials for your database are held. That's where pretty much anything and everything you need is at for that, and more in this report. Okay, so that's all I have for slides. So let's pop out of here and into a little bit on this site audit. Does this thing make me up and down? Hey, it does. That's cool. I didn't know it would work like that. That'll help me. I don't have to go down there and scroll the wild mouse wheel. Okay, this is a site audit report. Now, I've obscured the client I did this on, but this was on an actual live client site as when I went through it. So, and I found what worked out to be a total of about 15 hours worth of work needed to fix this website after it was done. It had issues such as, and I do have to use the mouse because it's bouncing out of. The website wasn't secured. It did have an SSL certificate, but as I said, it wasn't done correctly. They were using a plugin redirect along with additional redirects in the htaccess file, and only about a third of the tables in the database were actually pointing to the HTTPS instead of HTTP. So it required going in, removing the plugins, cleaning up the htaccess, and going through and running commands on the database to fix that up. It had plugins that were so out of date and had been flagged in the WordPress community as insecure and never been fixed. So they had to be replaced. The website itself wasn't even configured properly from its initial website. And this website wasn't young. It was about 5 or 6 years old. So it had never been set up from the get-go with the simple things such as the time zones, the byline, the other little things you do in the general settings for the WordPress install. They had extra domains that were pointed to incorrect spots, not configured correctly in the cPanel. Their database, they had three databases. They also had a database that when I looked at it, I'm looking, it's like, what are these tables for? They were tables left over from plugins that they had installed and uninstalled. And the plugins left behind all these extra tables. So this is what I found through it. And when the report was done, it comes down like this. You know, we'll jump right down to the, You start at the root folders, and the root folders on your site, pop in here. When you go into your cPanel, most cPanels now look like this one. There's still a few out there using the old style, but most cPanels all look like this now, or some customized version of it. So you'd go into your file manager for cPanel, and then, oh, seems I'm logged out. All right, we'll fix that. Come on. Okay, so when you go into your file manager for cPanel, this listing here is your root files. These are the files that are below your public HTML directory. These are the files that hopefully the public can never see or get to. If they do, they'll do massive damage to your hosting. Where you want to go once you get in here is into the public HTML directly. And 90% of the time, the public HTML directory is where your WordPress install is at. I still find it occasionally that someone has installed WordPress in the subdirectory here, but it's usually for one reason or another. Either they're running multiple WordPress installs, or they needed to do something special with their coding for it. Once upon a time, I used to run WordPress in those subdirectories. So what you're looking for in here, after a while, if you do enough of this, you get used to and you know what the core files of WordPress are supposed to be. One of the main things to think about when looking at the core files for WordPress, all of them begin with WP. And in ClasicPress right now, they still begin with WP, but sometime in their next iteration, on probably version 2, they'll begin with CP, I imagine. You can see down through here the main files, the ones that I was talking about, the htaccess file. This is the one that handles your security codes and other redirect information, etc. And the error log file. My server calls them error logs. Some servers just call it error. Yeah.
Out of the box, cPanel sometimes doesn't show hidden files, so the htaccess won't show.
Thank you. I forgot about that. I'm so used to just automatically turning it on. If you've got that, up here in the top left corner or top right corner, you'll see a gear icon for settings. And you just click on that settings, and it pops up the window here, and you check the box that says show hidden files. And hidden files are any files or folders that have a dot in front of them. To give you an example on what that would look like, let me back out of this and go to the main directory. You can see quite a few files down in here, but if I go and turn that off real quick, this is what you see. There's a lot of files that have a dot in front of them. They're secured files. They're files that are really hard to find. So you need to make sure that they're visible. Yeah, I'm so used to the habit of first time I log in, I don't see it, I check it, and I'm done. But thank you. Okay, your htaccess file. This is the first one I look at to see what it is. You can easily go up to it. You can edit it right here. I highly suggest before you do any manual editing in this particular spot, you've made a backup copy of this file. Because this file, if you do it wrong, you will lock everyone out of your website but you, because you've got the back-end access. So you'd have to delete this file and recreate it, or if you've made a backup, you just restore your backup. So this one here, it has just a few items in it. Right now, it's got a command in here to tell my website what version PHP it's supposed to be using. It has the standard WordPress code in there for creating your permalinks in WordPress. This stuff is done automatically by WordPress. This file doesn't have all of the rest of the code I usually put into a site. The error log, this one, a bit more entertaining generally, and especially when I look at this one here, in that it is, how big is it? Ooh, it's 341K. That's huge for text. That's like almost half a meg. So when you look at the file, it started on September 8th, so it's not even a month old. And you can just see the error is going down through here. I'll drop down to the latest one and see what I've got down here. So right now I've got a problem with a plugin called Cool Clock, dealing with its CSS. Not something I'm going to chase down or dig into on this site, but in many cases when I'm having issues with sites, when it dumps these errors, it makes it easy to debug and go figure out what's going on. Okay, so that's your root folders. So you're looking for other things in there that don't belong. You're looking for other things in there that don't belong, such as, and let me bring that back up for a minute. You're looking for things that don't belong. Everything here pretty much belongs, but you're looking for things such as extra PHP INI files. You're looking for any zip files. You're looking for something that just seems out of place from this. In this particular case, you'll see the error log, the index PHP, the license text, the readme HTML. Those files there come with WordPress. Anything else besides the WP ones and the XML RPC at the bottom, anything else beside those don't belong unless they were created for a very specific purpose. And currently I don't have a readily accessible site to display that information to you.
I generally sort by date, then I can see which ones, because the WP ones are usually the same date as the date of the install.
They change.
They can change, but
Every time WordPress is updated. It's like right now, I've got ones in here. You can look at my WP ones. I've got some from December 2018. I got December 2018 to August to January August. So when it updates, it only updates the...
yeah, but the weird files that aren't WP related
Oh.
will float to the top that way.
Maybe.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then if I don't recognize a file name, then I can check it quickly.
Yeah, hackers have gotten better though.
Yeah,
They've learned how to install files and set the date. And I've seen them hack some of my files and the date didn't change from a couple years ago. So I'm not certain how they're doing that now, but they're managing to. Now the hackers are getting better, unfortunately. We'll find ways around them. It's a constant arms race. Okay, next thing you'll want to look at the folders you don't have. If your website is performing poorly in any way, shape, or form, and you just want to get a nice clean install of WordPress, what you can do is you can log into your WordPress website, go to your dashboard, find out what version WordPress you're installing. In this case, I've got 5.06 in here. Go to WordPress.org and download that particular version of WordPress. Then you can go into here and you can highlight the WP admin folder, the WP includes folder, and all of these files with WP on them, and just delete them. Delete them from your site. And then reinstall those folders and files back to your website from a good, clean install. It's one of the quickest ways I've discovered when dealing with a hacked website. If I think there's problems inside WP admin or WP content, there should not be anything in there that anyone has done. Coders, they don't write inside those because those are the files that get changed with WordPress updates. So nobody takes a chance on messing with those. They do all their coding and use the hooks of WordPress. So by deleting those files, you eliminate anything that hackers have stuck into those folders. And hackers love to stick stuff in those folders. They do. And they stick stuff in there that they go WP dash or underscore or WP dash, and they call it some name that's really close to a file that looks like it belongs to WordPress. So that's one of their games now. So that's one of the things you'll want to do. And that's a very simple, easy way to ensure that you've cleaned out the core WordPress files with known good files. Once that's eliminated, That brings you to your one folder you don't ever want to delete unless you've made a full backup of it. This is your WP content folder. This is where all plugins are installed, all themes are in this folder. Every image that you've ever uploaded to your website goes in here. When you go in here, you'll want to look at it to see what's in here. You can see I've got a cache folder in here. This is created by a cache plugin. I've also got an MU plugins folder. Not every site has an MU plugins folder. MU meaning must use plugins. If you're ever building a website or working on a client's website and you want to stick a plugin in that they can't turn off or do anything with, you stick it in the MU folder. It means it automatically gets activated and the client or user administrator of WordPress can't touch it. You have to go in and manually deal with it. The plugins folder, where your plugins are installed. The themes folder, where your themes are installed. The upgrade folder, this is the folder used by WordPress when you do an automatic upgrade, or when you're upgrading the core files, when you're upgrading plugins. It downloads those files from the web, puts them into the upgrade folder, extracts them, and then pushes them out to all the places they belong on your site. And the uploads folder. So what you're looking for when you come into this particular folder is you're looking for something outside of these core norms. These are the norms. Now, it's not unusual to have one in here that's got, oh, I could probably go into my own website real quick, and because that'll have a whole lot. Oops. Yeah, wrong place. Oops. There we go. Pick the right one. No, I guess not. Oh, I do have one. I have one other unusual one. I have one, WF logs here. It's a WordFence logs. But I have one of my websites that has it has like 9 or 10 different folders in there from different things that I'm doing with the site. So it's one of the things to look at on there. So you're looking for any unusual files or folders there. The next place you're going to want to look is your uploads folder. Now this one can go back for years on here. And you're looking for, first off, your standard years. This website here came online in 2018. So it's only got 2018, 2019. And in my John Overall website, where I'm looking at here, uploads, goes all the way back to 2009. So I've got 10 years in here. That's how long this website has been online. And that's what you should see. You should see yearly folders in here. And then you should see other things that you expect to see depending on the types of plugins you've installed. You should expect to see a fonts folder if you've been using custom fonts. You expect to see a cache folder if you've been using a caching plugin, a design library, dynamic via. I know these from the theme I'm using. The theme I'm using creates these extra folders for its specified content. You're also looking at custom JS Composer customizations. This is for WP Bakery, Revolution Slider, a time capsule, which is a plugin that I've been using and testing, and a security audit log that I run. So expect to see these in here, but if there's anything in there that doesn't make sense to you, investigate it. Find out what it is. Don't just automatically delete it as being bad, because it might be something a plugin created. And sometimes plugin developers, well, they can get real creative with their names of things. And mainly because they need to be different than everyone else out there. And that's the big problem. You don't want to end up with the same name some other developer is using for what you do. Because if it happened to end up on the same website, you would run right into each other. So these are the main core folders that you'll want to investigate. You do want to investigate your plugins folder. Like you see how many plugins are installed on your site. I'm currently in this site here. I've got like 50 or 60 in there. Not all of them active, but this is various testing. On my own website, I actually do run 56 plugins, 56 active plugins on my website. So it's not unusual to run a high number of plugins. But just make sure all the plugins are the ones you expect to be in there. Look to see if there's any folder names that don't make sense. That's what you're looking for. So basically every folder you go through and you're looking, look to see if it's something that seems out of place for this website. And we already covered the htaccess file. Error log. So one of the things that does happen, in particular when I was talking about this one I did on a site, the error log on this test site is 300K. When I was doing it on the client site, they had a 300 megabyte error log. You can't even read that. Nothing opens it properly. Not a text plug-in. Sometimes you're lucky you can get Word to open it, but 300 megabytes of pure text is hundreds, thousands of pages. That's a lot of text of just pure text at 300 megs. So basically all you can do is if you got an error log over 1 meg in size, you may as well just delete it and wait for the new errors to be recreated, because if it's that big, the errors are coming in fast and furious. Which is basically why I deleted it, and within 5 minutes it had a 600K error log. So it was like, okay, they're coming in fast and furious. And so I was able to help fix their site because of the errors coming through. All right. Now something that you do want to look to see if you've got on your site is a robots text file. If you don't have one, you need to go create one. The robots text file is what is used to help give direction to the well-behaved search bots. Let me clarify that. The well-behaved search bots.
Good definition.
It was, in theory, what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to prevent search bots from coming to your website. But the only ones that actually pay attention to these commands is the major bots. Google, Bing, a few others. You know, most of the other bad bots out there that create problems on your website, they ignore this anyway. You have to figure out how to block them through other methods. And you can block them through htaccess commands and other things. And that is going to be one of the biggest things that impacts many websites. If you're having a speed issue on your site, or you're having overreach issues, issues with resource usage on your website from your hosting provider, probably 8 out of 10 times it's bad bots hitting your website. And they're hitting your website at such a massive speed. And those bots come from the United States, Canada, Russia, Japan, China, South Africa. They come from everywhere. There's no particular place in particular. You know, a lot's blamed on Russia, Ukraine, and other places right now, but I see it from everywhere. Every country does it. And it's not the country doing it, it's the persons behind the keyboard that are sending out the bots to attack sites. And what they're doing on your sites is they're often trying to hack your website. They're hitting your WP login files. They're looking for holes in your website, is what those bots are doing. And if you'd like a basic for that, for a bot setup, or for the robot text setup, again, send me an email. I'll happily send you a good basic one. To let everyone know, there is going to be, I am working on a training seminar that goes with this stuff here that I'll be putting up on my website, hopefully finishing it in a month. That'll contain all this information, and it'll be like a $50 fee to access it. So get the stuff free while you can. Okay, your WP config file. This one here is a very critical file. probably your most critical file on your website. We'll pop in here and have a look at it. See everyone on the web. I'll go change the codes in it later. Because anyone who's watching the stream right now is going, ooh, what's that database password we just scrolled past? So this contains your database password. It contains your salt keys. It contains additional information, usually at the bottom of a website. It turns on debug for your website. It's where I put additional commands on websites when they don't have enough memory allocated for WordPress. There's a lot of commands you can put in here that impact the speed and performance of your WordPress website. And it is the most critical file of WordPress. So you'll want to monitor this one. And periodically, this bundle of stuff right here, the salt, these salt keys, if your WordPress website is older than, I think the last time they updated the salt was 3-4 years ago. They added a couple new lines to it. If it's older than that, your salt setup is not covering WordPress 100% secure. So what you need to do is go to, I can't remember, salt. Just do search in Google for WordPress salt, and it'll take you to the website. It's a very specific site where WordPress does it. If you don't want to use that, and if you think that it's a problem, just go look at the latest config file from WordPress.org, and there's a sample salt in there. And all you have to do is go in there and scramble up a few more letters. Usually what I do with the salt keys when I get them, I let the online generate, I paste them in, and then I go through each line and I add a couple of dozen letters and numbers to it. So it's completely randomized, even from what was on the web. So, and what the salt keys do is the salt keys are used for your authorization keys, your login key. When you log in, it adds a cookie and the salt to it to encrypt it. And basically all the encryptions that are done on your site are done with these set of keys. So that's why you'll want to check them, keep them up to date. And go through and make sure there's no unusual codes, because believe it or not, the hackers have found ways to get edits into your WP config file without ever gaining access to it. So, haven't seen that one in a long time now. Quick knock on wood. Is there any wood around here? There we go.
What permission you got on yours?
Mine's a 6666.
So
I can't remember what 666 is.
everybody can read right.
Yeah. I didn't set it.
Usually I think I have mine set at 600.
Yeah. Well, 600. The best permission you can set for it is 400.
400.
You know, and you can do that with your htaccess file too. If you want to go through and manually set permissions down, set them to 400. That means the programs can't access them to write them. The only one that can access it is you, and even in here, you have to change permission before you can edit it here. So.
The danger of the 400 on htaccess is if it needs to remake the permalink scheme in htaccess, it can't.
It can't do it.
When you get it jammed and
Yeah, you can't do it. So you got to be careful on how you set your permissions. I mean, you set them as tight as you need to set them to allow performance of things. And if you don't, if you're the only one doing things, you can set them all the way down to where nothing can get through except the people hitting the front end of your website. Yeah, the uploads folder, we discussed that, dealing with the uploads folder, looking at the themes folder. The themes folder, and I think I kind of glossed over that one, but we'll pop back to it for a second. You'll want to look in here and see, because one of the biggest areas I have seen for hackers access to WordPress websites is through the themes folder. Not the themes folder, but the themes in the folder. And it's usually because I find that people like to experiment with themes when they're setting up their WordPress website, and they'll install 5, 10, 15, 20 themes, and then they'll never delete them. They just sit there. And they're turned off. Yeah, okay, well, they think, oh, it's no big deal, they're turned off. Well, it is a big deal, because they can still be hacked. And that's the problem. And that's where I've seen more hacks come through than anywhere else. Plugins are a close second to that. Error logs, we've talked about the error logs and what you see in an error log. Let's bring up that there. See, when it brings up an error log here, you can see that it brings up the errors and tells you exactly what it is. And this one here, we had a problem with the htaccess file itself. So that was something that I went in and dealt with and took care of on this website. Okay, so once you get beyond checking all of that, you'll want to find out what kind of issues your site is having. And if you're on decent, good quality cPanel hosting, you get a few tools in here that can help you with that task. In particular, one of them is a bandwidth tool that when you access it here, it tells you what the bandwidth being used on that website is. And this bandwidth can tell you a lot about what's happening in your website. It'll tell you when spikes are happening in your bandwidth. And those spikes, if they are abnormal, are usually an issue with bots hitting your website. What you're looking for with bandwidth is you're looking for relatively even. You can see I've got a couple of spikes here on bandwidth. At these points here, these are usually the backups I have running, because a backup on your site will cause a spike in your bandwidth. But you're looking for a pattern across here in the lower spikes, and you're looking for unusual high spikes in through it. And it tells you where the traffic's coming in on your site. One of the things this can tell you is if you're getting traffic on non-HTTPS, if you're getting traffic on the HTTP portion of your website. So it helps you to determine and diagnose things that are happening. It tells you if someone's been going through, like if you've got a website and no emails attached to it, and suddenly you got traffic on your POP3 or your IMAP, you shouldn't have email going through that. Why should you have bandwidth going through your POP if you're not using email on that particular domain? So these are things that help you identify problem areas of your website. The other tool that helps you out quite a bit, aside from getting you the real stats about what's happening in your website, if you ever really want to know what your traffic is to your website, don't depend on Google Analytics. Don't depend on a plugin from WordPress. What you need to do is you need to go into your cPanel, go into AW Stats, and first thing you'll want to look at, you'll notice the AW Stats lists two domains. It lists the domain without SSL and the domain with SSL. So it monitors the traffic on both of those. If you think and believe your site is fully SSL'd, you'll want to check your non-SSL version and see, am I getting traffic in here? Well, it turns out that this site is getting traffic on the non-SSL. Hopefully I've set up the proper redirects for it to come through. And that's usually because somebody types in, or in case of, I can't remember which browser it is now. Chrome doesn't do it and Firefox don't do it anymore, but I can't remember the browser. But if you just type a domain name in, sometimes it tries to go to the non-SSL version still. Whereas Chrome and Firefox automatically assume you mean HTTPS. But it still happens to me. I'm trying to log into a site and for some reason I can't get there and it's popping me into the non-HTML or non-SSL version. It's just making a mess of things. But you can see I've had some traffic here on this site in the non-SSL. Not a lot. 82 visitors, 195 visits. I really don't want a lot of traffic to this site anyway because it's all just junk. But you can go down and find out when your peak traffic times are. If you're running a e-commerce website or a blog or something and you put out a post at a specific time of day, you'll notice periods of time when your traffic is low, you put out your blog and the traffic rises and then it falls off. You'll know that's human because it's nice and smooth. It coincides with a blog post or it coincides with a sale. Or if you're running an e-commerce store and your traffic starts to rise at about 4 in the afternoon, peaks at about 9 at night and then goes off, it means all the people coming home from work, shopping on your store, and then as they go to bed, traffic rises down. But if you're as a website that's, say, focused at West Coast, North America, and you've got traffic spikes at 2 a.m. in the morning, that's not normal. You shouldn't have traffic spikes at 2 a.m. in the morning because your website isn't focused for a time zone in that. And in particular, you got to make sure that you're also making sure that the time zone of the content you're getting for your site is in your time zone because your server might not be in your time zone. Like my servers are in Ontario time zones, Quebec time zones. But I have my stuff set up on my accounts to feed it to me in my local time zone, so I don't have to do the math conversions. Because I hate time zones with a passion. But we can't go to a universal time zone. It just won't work. Who's going to be up at 2 p.m. and make it dark for them? Okay, so you'll come down through here. Let me pop back into here and look at the SSL version of this. And you see I've got significantly more traffic here. Most of this is bot traffic to this site. That's all it really is. No, I doubt any humans are coming in. But I have 1,600 visitors this month to the site, and I'm pretty sure all of it's bot traffic. And that's the thing you'll want to determine. And you determine that by scrolling down here. Look at your hours of traffic. Well, it's pretty even. But you come down here and you look at where the traffic's coming from. In this particular case, it's the United States. And I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of spam and bots come from the US. Just for the simple fact that weekends and holidays, my spam drops by 60%. I'm pretty sure that they take the weekends and holidays off like the rest of North America. So Canada, close second in here. But the big one here is the IP addresses that it's coming from, because this will help you determine if it's bot traffic. You can go look these IP addresses up online, very simply. You can type the IP address straight into Google. It'll kick up who owns that IP, help you determine what's happening with it. This first IP address here, this is the IP address of my server. So my server is the major chunk of my traffic. And that is because when I log in, that is your heartbeat control, the other miscellaneous things that go on behind the scenes while you're logged into your website. And that's me not logging out of the website. If you don't log out of your WordPress website, your server will continue to ping your website the entire time until your logout times out. And a WordPress login, once you log in, it'll keep you logged in. If you say remember me, it'll keep you logged in for 2 weeks. So you want to try to remember to log out if you want to get more realistic stats on these numbers here. Come in here, it also tells you which bots and spiders have crawled your website. And this one here is actually kind of useful. This one here, it tells you my highest trafficked one here at 1.21 megs. Yeah, it looks like the highest trafficked one, 1.21 megs, came from an unknown robot identified by bot/star. I guarantee he's not a well-behaved robot because he's not identifying himself. But you can see through it, I've got unknown bot, crawl, curl, Google bot comes and goes away and says, yeah, we don't want this junk. Bing bot, Yandex, Java, empty user string. Empty user string is often hackers trying to come in because that's what they use, an empty user string trying to get into your site. Unknown robots identified, they tried to hit the robot's text file. So these are interesting things. When you've got a fully active site and you look at this information, you'll see a big list of bots. There's a lot of them out there. So it's a great way to find out what's happening on your site. Visits duration. This also indicates bots. You can see it starts at the top and it starts from 0 to 30 seconds. Bot, that's how long bots are there, 0 to 30 seconds. And you can see the vast majority of the visits are 0 to 30 seconds. Humans, they'll usually stay 30 seconds or more, minute, maybe 2 minutes. Take them that long to figure out where they want their content, unless they're like me, searching. I hit it and go, yeah, that's not what I want. I bounce right back. But most of the time, humans will stay a little longer. So you can see humans have been hanging around here, and I don't know why, because there's really no content here. File types. This tells you what file types are getting hit the most on your site. This is a really good key and indicator if your site is being attacked or if you're being probed. It's seeing what files that they're hitting on your site. Pages. This one here is also very useful in the stats. All of this stuff is used to help you determine what's happening in your site, how to fix it, and what things you can go through and fix and clean up. So as you can see, and again, this is again right off the top, the WP login. That's pretty much me. Because I stay logged in, and the WP login is, once you're logged in, that is constantly pinged in the background by the heartbeat control. XML RPC, again, that one there, that should be turned off, actually. You'll want to, unless you've got a specific use for it, you'll want to turn it off and just make it not accessible. Content folders, etc. Go down, going down through here helps you discover what's happening on your site. Also, operating systems, you'll find out if there's a lot of unknown operating systems. That's usually an indication of hackers going after you of some sort, because they set up their systems to...
Or they're coming with a script instead of a browser.
Yeah. Still an unknown operating system. Browsers, top browsers. And you can see, Firefox, which is what I use when I'm working on it, so that's the top browser. Most of the stats generated here are generated from me when I'm doing work and sitting there. What websites they come on. Now, something to be aware of when you're looking at these websites, a lot of times what will happen is people will see an unusually named site and think, why is that linking to me? Do not click that link, okay? Because hackers, spammers, they hit your site, or they'll fake a hit from their site to your site, and they do this to get people that are wandering through to go, what is that? And they click through to it. You could end up with a drive-by download. You could just be helping increase their traffic. Any number of things for why they do it. But just don't click the links. If you want to know what they are, copy the URL, paste it into a Google search, and make sure you're just searching in Google for it and that it's not going to redirect you to the URL. Go search for it in Google and see what the site is. Usually take off the HTTP, separate the name, the name and the dot, whatever it is. Just use the name, not the extension on it. That'll help you figure out what's happening with it and where it's coming from. And the other thing at the bottom is the HTTP status codes. This tells you a bit about what's happening. It tells you how many 404 errors have been hit on your site, how many 301 redirects, 400 errors, bad requests, etc., etc. This is a nice area to find out if you've got a lot of bad pages or bad requests for pages on your site. Also, it could be an indication of a bot attack or a hack attack on your site. They may go after a page that doesn't exist on your site just to see if they can get through. So, the possibilities there are endless. So when I talked briefly about the databases, inside your cPanel, there's a program called PHP MyAdmin. And the PHP MyAdmin takes you directly to the MySQL database management for your website. This is where you can see what's happening in your website. And you can see in here, I only have one database installed. The schema is a markup table specifically tied to the MySQL file. So never worry about that one. What you're looking for is a database that usually has part of your domain or however you set up your database names in here. In that, you can go in and load up the database, and it loads up all the tables that are available in your database. And you can see over to the right hand side, it tells you the size of all the tables in there. And it also tells you if there's a database that has overhead. Like this one right here, it tells me the database is 10.3K in size and we have a 312.8 overhead. And what that means, for the most part, it means new data that's been added to the table, which hasn't been fully collated, or it means data that's been removed from the table and it hasn't been fully collated through the tables. There's a nice simple way to fix this up. Most servers, such as myself, my servers runs either about every 12 or 24 hours. I can't remember, but it automatically runs through all the tables in the database and does a cleanup and repair of all the tables on the server. Most hosting providers provide that, not all of them do. And what can happen is if you start to get lots of tables with overhead in here, that slows down your database queries dramatically. Because what happens is it goes in, I got to fetch data from this table across here, which is the comment meta. So I got to fetch data from the comment meta table. Oh, wait a minute, we got this data here that's not quite set. It's got to look here, so it's got to look through and figure out where it is. To us, it might be milliseconds, but delivering the page could add another half a second or a second to it. And as we know from the internet, a second of download time to your page could mean the difference between somebody staying or leaving your website. I mean, we don't live in the world of Amazon, but what is it? They figured a half a second download speed of a page was how many millions of dollars of lost sales to them. So that's what it eventually means to you, is lost sales or whatever you're trying to do with your site. So as you just go down through the tables, you'll see all the tables. And one of the other things you're looking for here, and this database in particular is not too bad, but the other one you're looking at here is a number of events. Something seems out of place here. Oh, there it is, rows. Okay, so this blank right down through the middle here, this is the number of rows in a table. Okay, these rows, the more data you put in there, the more rows you get. I've got, I'm not going to open up my database to expose it, but on my website, one of the rows for my main content, the WordPress content, is somewhere like 1.5 million rows now. And so they get huge. Lots of rows means lots of queries to search through to find that content. So if there's a way you can clean them up, you'll want to clean them up on a regular basis. You can the older your site gets, the harder it gets to keep it clean. That much I have figured out over time. So what you're looking for when you're scrolling down is you're looking for a table that might have lots of rows. And in this particular instance, my largest table is my post meta. And this is when you're creating posts on your website, this is where everything you do on that post, from the category you put it into, the content to the post, to all the other little miscellaneous stuff, goes into this table. And this is a table that usually gets to be the biggest on your website. But if you're looking through your site, look for any of the tables that seem excessively large. And if they're excessively large, find out why. Did a plugin go nuts and do like, what was it Yoast did last year when it started going nuts and created mass amounts of entries? So it's like you never know if a plugin may have suddenly gone nuts and done something crazy. So you have to clean it all up. Caveat, number one thing, before you mess with anything of this on here, make a backup. Backups are easily made through the cPanel. Well, I should clarify that easily part. Not every hosting provider provides you with this one button right here, backup. Some hosting providers will only provide you with that button for an extra fee. They charge you an extra fee to give you the backup button, which is built in the cPanel anyway. So, a good hosting provider has it right there for you. And you go into here and you can make full backups of your site. You can go make individual backups of databases and just the core files. But before you do anything to your database, make this backup. Because once you make a change in here, you cannot reverse it. It is unreversible, whatever you do. So in particular, getting rid of this overhead, as I said, simple enough to do. Down at the bottom, you'll see where you can check all the tables. And you'll want to check that box. Go over here to what to do if selected. And you'll see there's a lot you can do here. You can copy these tables. You can show or create. You can export these tables. You can delete or drop these tables. Really easy to do. Did that once. Fortunately, they have a thing in here that pops up. Are you sure you want to do this? Oh, wait a minute. No, I almost did. Shouldn't say I did do it. You can analyze the tables, check them, and the one I use most often here is the repair table. Just above that is the optimize table. The optimize table cleans up that overhead. But if there's any glitches in that table, it doesn't fix those. What the repair table does is it not only optimizes the table, but it repairs it at the same time. So that's why you'll want to always use repair table. That way you get the best of both worlds. It doesn't take that much longer. And depending on how big your database is, like on my own database for johnorwell.com, it takes a good 90 seconds now for it to do a repair on the database. So just sit and wait. If it seems like it's taking a long time, sit and wait until you get this green bar across the top that it's successfully finished. Now every once in a blue moon, it'll fail. And if it fails, there's a good chance it damaged the table on the way. So that's why you make the backup. Because if you've got the backup, you can restore it really quickly and keep your website live. So again, with the database, what you're looking for is unusual tables. With WordPress core itself installed, it only has 25 tables, I believe. It's not very many tables in WordPress core. It's very short, not a lot. This one here, how many tables am I showing right now? 122. I think my website has 175. I've got one client, we've got 197 tables. You know, because what happens is you create tables, different plugins create tables. There might be some manually created tables for some reason or another. Themes may create tables. Lots of things create tables to store their data. So you'll want to check it. But yeah, I believe there's only like 25 in WordPress core. So if you install WordPress core by itself, 25 tables. Lightning fast. But once you start adding stuff is when you start bogging down your site. So this is why you want to look at your database to see what's happening in it, to see what's gone in there. Does it got bloat? Does it need to be cleaned? And there are scripts that you can use for cleaning it. There's lots of ways to do it. Beware, make a backup. Always make a backup before you get started on that. Now back to Now inside the control panel, before you head off there, come back here, you've got buttons here for MySQL and databases, a MySQL database wizard. The remote MySQL you would rarely use unless you're a developer. I don't think I've used remote MySQL in 8 or 9 years. There's really no point nowadays. Once upon a time you had to use it regularly because they couldn't run the websites and the MySQL database on the same server because they just didn't have the capacity to do it. But now they do. Almost all your web hosting providers have a local hosting for your MySQL database. If you go in here, this lists off your database. This is where you can come in, modify the username and passwords for your MySQL databases. You can add users to a MySQL database, change the permission settings, what's accessible. And if you're really super big into security and you want to really make your life sometimes miserable, you can go in and tweak the settings that the permissions you allow a user to access in a MySQL database. I've seen a nice long article on it and they're suggesting what you can do, and I tried it on a test site and I found their settings made it so difficult to accomplish anything because you had to as you restrict things down, you make it hard for certain types of programming to access certain areas of the database and to do certain things and actions to the database. So keep that in mind. I mean, most of the settings, where's the users of database? Nope, I can just change password. Yeah, let's see what happens here. Let's bring this up. Yeah, here's what you get when you bring it up. If you want to add users to a database, you give it all privileges, or you can start turning off different things here. Once you turn off different things, it means different type of programming will not work on your database through the user. So most of the time, in fact, the default setting is to have all privileges. Oops. I just closed my cPanel. Oh, that's way back. Maybe. There we go. There's way back. Okay, so that's what you'll want to do. You want to check that and look that over really well. And again, you're looking for extra databases that don't belong anymore. Another area to check, and this one is starting to get fairly critical. And not all hosting providers are fully up to speed yet. And that is for your PHP version. I'm still running into sites where some hosting providers have their maximum PHP at 7 available for websites. And what you're looking at is you're looking for this item here, the multi-PHP manager. And what this does is on a hosting provider, it's the new way of choosing which version of PHP you can put on your WordPress, ClasicPress website. And PHP 7.2 is sunsetting in December of this year. 7.3 is the new standard, the only active version. A lot of websites in WordPress are still at PHP 5.6, and 5.6 is no longer even supported. And they skipped over 6 completely. They went from 5 to 7. I guess they, have something fear of number 7. Couldn't tell you. But the big thing is you can come in here, like I've got this site here set at 7.2, so I need to update it. So as you can see over here, on my server, I have available from 5.6 to 7 to 7.1 to 7.2 to 7.3. Now this is kind of actually important because even though 7.2 is no longer going to be supported after December, and 7.1 isn't supported, and 5.6 isn't supported, there's still websites I have that haven't been fully upgraded to be able to move from 5.6. I think I have one, and that's because there's a plugin in there that is critical to the functioning of the website that doesn't work in PHP 7. I've got some that will work in PHP 7, but they won't work in PHP 7.3 because of all the code changes that have happened in those things. So what can happen is you can go, well, I'm at 5.6 or 7.2. Well, I can pop it into 7.3, apply that, go look at the website, and this one I don't believe will break. But I've done it. I've applied it. I go look at the website, and all of a sudden I've got a white screen. I have nothing. So what you have to do is immediately go back and move it back to the previous version, and now you got to get in there and spend time diagnosing. On this particular estimate I did for the client, that's exactly what we ran into. I tried to move them forward, and it white screened it. So we had to go in and fix the plugin that was causing the problem. And it turned out it was one of those plugins that was so far out of date and hadn't been updated with security flaw anyway, so we turfed it. Yes? Oh, you look like you had a question. Okay. So that's what you want to make sure you've dealt with and looked at, is what version PHP. And make sure your host is providing it. If your host isn't providing it, send them an email, ask them to. They should be able to get it taken care of within, 1 to 7 days, somewhere in that time zone. If you're tired of your host never being up to date with stuff, come see me. Because there's a fair number of them out there that don't stay up to date. Okay, other things you'll want to check in your website. If this website has been around for a while, or it's one you inherited, you want to get into the dashboard area, and the first thing you want to check is the number of users on that site. Now, if it's an e-commerce site, there might be hundreds of users, but you're not worried about the ones that are registered users or sales users. You're worried about the ones under administrator, editor, or administrator or editor level. Those are the ones you want to worry about. There should only be 1 to 3 maximum, unless there's a reason that that organization has more users for that. And I've got a few organizations where they've got 3, 4, 5 administrators. And that's for various purposes. Various people need to have access at that level to the site. But for the most part, you need to keep that down to as minimal number as possible. Also, it's not uncommon for me to inherit a site, and the developer who built their site 3 years ago has gotten access. The developer who took over the site a year ago has access, and then some intern person that was helping them has access. So we've got 3 people in that chain that no longer even remember they've touched that site to have administrative access. Another thing to check in here, and this is something I don't think enough people look at, and in fact I know they don't, because I have set up websites 4 and 5 years ago that I still get emails from. They've long since left me as a client. They've moved on to a couple developers down the road, and that is the email address for the core administrator of the site. I still get those emails from them.
When in doubt, it's your default answer reply email address for WooCommerce.
Yeah.
So if you're the developer, the site owner won't get notices that the developer will get.
Yeah, and WordPress is actually, they're looking at putting something in the core. I read an article today. They're going to put in the core a new function that every 6 months when someone logs in, if they're an administrator of the site, it's going to ask if it's a valid, they're going to ask if that address right here is still valid, to help remind people that own websites that might not know this exists, for one, because it was set up by a developer. Or the developer set it up and just forgot about it. Or they set it up under some email address for Hotmail way back when and long since abandoned that account. But this is something you do want to check because it's really important to get core emails about that. And this is the other area that a lot of people forget to check and fill out, is the general settings here where they set up the site title, the tagline, your time zone. That's the one I see the most. They're in the Pacific time zone, all of their information's in Pacific time zone, yet their website is set to UTC, which is the default setting for WordPress. Day of the week format, that's just preference. So I never give that one a bad check mark because some people may like it that way. Personally, I don't like it that way. The default setting for WordPress for day of the week is Monday, which to me, the first day of the week is Sundays. So these are things that you want to check. Again, from inside here, checking on plugins. You can tell this is my dev site because as you can see, it shows I need 32 updates for this site. Not even a dev site. This is my experimental site. This is where I just throw it all in here. So it needs 32 plugins updated and a whole lot of other stuff. WordPress core is out of date, the whole 9 yards. This is a site where I throw things at it as I need to test them. This is also where I often test off plugins that I'm doing for my podcast. All right. And that's pretty much all I've got. I've covered over and talked about the taking it to GT metrics and doing an exam there and seeing what you get on your site. Now, I'll give you a really nice, good tip about GT metrics. When you use GT metrics the first time, create an account. The reason you'll want to do this is once you've created an account at GT metrics, what happens is when you log into your account, you can go back and look at the stuff you've analyzed in the back, or you can look at the recent sites that you've analyzed. It saves your analysis, but the other thing it allows you to do is you can change. Let's bring this one up. This is the one I did yesterday, day before. You can retest this. Oops. Sorry, I meant to change it. But you can change the server it's testing from. Their default server is Vancouver, Let's say you've got someone down in Texas or on the East Coast that's having problems. You can change to a server in Texas. And I can't remember where their server is. They have 5 different locations around the globe you can test from. Let's go sit there. Here it is. There we go. We can test from Hong Kong, Vancouver, London, Mumbai, Sydney, Sao Paulo, and Vancouver. So this gives you some really good points across the globe. If you've got clients that have their stuff in, let's say, London in Europe, and they need to know what kind of connection they're getting from Europe to your server, which is located in North America, you can test it with GTmetrix to see how it's getting to your site in North America. So it's always good to know when you're testing across the globe. And GTmetrix saves all that information for you as you go through. And allows you to get out and get in there and do comparisons, which is always my favorite thing to do, to compare before and afters. You can go into the history and you can do a comparison. You can see yesterday when I was checking it, it was at 4 seconds, and today it's down to 2.2 seconds. And really I did nothing to it. It was just the internet connection at the time. So, any other questions I can answer? Directions I can help you with? Was that good tonight? How about that? Every once in a while.
You filled us with knowledge.
Yeah.
ClasicPress.
ClasicPress.
You gonna give us some more information?
Oh, go to ClasicPress.net. ClasicPress is WordPress 4.9. ClasicPress forked WordPress 4.9 at that point there before Gutenberg was installed in the WordPress. So if you really dislike Gutenberg as much as I do, you'll want to use ClasicPress. And currently, ClasicPress is compatible with every plugin that is still compatible with version 4.9. And there is a plugin that is available. You'd have to go to 1 or 2 podcasts ago, I reviewed it, a plugin for ClasicPress that you can install, and it gives you a listing of plugins, all the major plugins for ClasicPress, and all the major plugins in WordPress that are, whether they're compatible with ClasicPress or not compatible with ClasicPress. But ClasicPress is up and coming. I know that. I like their community much better than I do WordPress's community. They're much friendlier and more helpful. So, especially after dealing with the plugin I was hoping to use on a website for building a membership site before I could fully implement it. It was when this developer ran into troubles with WordPress, and they were as big an ass to him as they were to me. And he said, "To hell with you, I'm gone." And he almost abandoned his plugin completely, but fortunately someone came along and talked him into a partnership for marketing so that he could sell it. He's probably going to sell it off his own website, and he'll probably make a lot of money with it because he has created a better membership plugin that I have seen in a long time. One that actually does everything it was supposed to. And the worst part is he was giving away 90% of it for free. It's like, and the community was just treating him poorly. And it's all because he's a brand new developer. He's only been developing for just over 1.5 years. And nobody wanted to help him, So unfortunately, that's, but ClasicPress is great. It works well. I rebuilt my entire WordPress plugins website, A to Z, using ClasicPress. And every single one of the plugins I was using in WordPress. And before I moved the site over, it was running at WordPress 5.2. And so I had it up in Gutenberg already, but I wanted to get out of it. And so all the plugins came over and moved and worked. Right now I'm working through replacing a couple of them, like I'm chucking Yoast out the window for the new one that I've found through there. They've got a better plugin than Yoast for SEO. And so I'm going to be examining that one. They have, if you're like me and use TinyMCE, CodePotent out there has written a replacement for TinyMCE. So there are developers writing for ClasicPress. It'll take them a while before they start to catch up, I believe. But as more and more people get fed up with the way WordPress community treats them, they're going to grow.
So what happened about themes and stuff like that?
They all work the same. Currently, they all work the same. I built my website in Elementor. I'm using Elementor I used Elementor for my new version of WP plugins. And it said it's built on ClasicPress. Right now, everything works. In another 2 years, we're going to start to see touch and go issues. Hopefully there'll be enough developers on board in 2 years that they'll make their plugins compatible with both ClasicPress and WordPress, because they'll realize there's enough market there. Because ClasicPress's market is really for the business person, the person who doesn't need what Gutenberg offers. Gutenberg, I read an article a week or two ago. They are planning to make Gutenberg a full-blown page editor system in the core. So I can see the poor page editor guys out there like Elementor, Page Builder, Beaver Builder, those guys there are going to have a tough time dealing with that competition, because people are like, why do I need Beaver Builder, or why do I need, I can't remember the other big one.
Or like Divi or Visual Composer.
Visual Composer is another big one. Why do I need Visual Composer if I can do the same thing with Gutenberg? So that'll be the thing. That's what's going to happen. And that's still a couple of years down the road, because the biggest problem is going to occur when WordPress stops supporting the classic editor. And they have said they're going to stop supporting it in December 2021. It's only a year and a half away now.
But they did jump the gun on Gutenberg. So December 2021 isn't...
yeah, they crammed Gutenberg
it isn't a real deadline. Could become October 2021.
Yeah, currently it's December 2021. So, but that, they could go earlier, but it's hard to say. It depends. Like, they're making advances in Gutenberg, and a lot of people do love it. I tried it. I gave it a go. I gave it an honest go, but I couldn't get into the way it works. It was like going to Wix or going to Medium, and I didn't like those sites either. I didn't like the way the editors worked or interacted. So but it boils down to what is needed. Gutenberg is overkill for business websites, because business websites are built up mainly to present a look and for the business owners to come in, create content, put it in a block, and then have that block presented without them having to do anything. And that's why that Gutenberg doesn't make it that easy, because Gutenberg, you have to create different blocks. People say you can, but it hasn't been my experience. So I started branching my show out, and I'm trying to get more ClasicPress news, information, and plugins. I just don't have that much yet, but more will come. More and more of the developers in ClasicPress are talking about me and sending me information, and trying to get my name known. So, but it is good. It is a good program at the moment, and they just came out with their latest version that's fixed a bunch of the security holes, the same security holes that were affecting WordPress. So they're keeping it up to date, and they've got a really good team. I've interviewed a couple of people on their team for my show.
So, have you ever used Google Page Speed Insights?
Yes.
Okay, so why is our website so fast on a desktop? It's like down to 0.9 seconds, but it's really, really long on a slow loading on a cell phone. It's like
On what?
it's slow loading on a cell phone. It's
Oh.
like 5.6 seconds on a cell phone, and so you don't understand what.
I'd have to see what PageSpeed site says. Maybe there's some images that are being presented in the wrong size. Because one of the things that happens that I know of happens with mobile versions versus desktop. The mobile version is delivering the desktop size image instead of a smaller image. It's actually delivering the large image squeezed down. So it's still delivering a 500K file on desktop, which comes across fast, but on mobile, 500K is not going to come across fast, as an example. But it's still the same image, but it's just squeezed, resized down.
If it's a 320 pixel wide image, that's the space you're showing it in, and it's significantly bigger, then that's going to be a red flag. For
So it could be down to your images. It could be anything. There's the reasons are numerous. It could be the theme is not dealing with the CSS properly. Could be a caching issue if you've got caching running.
we always empty the cache.
Yeah, so there's lots, not, you're talking about the cache on your website or cache on your phone?
And, we always empty the cache
Oh.
on the website.
Oh, okay.
We don't have any cache on the
Yeah,
phone.
the website caching shouldn't be emptied very often. You know, it's usually emptied when you do updates to posts, updates to plugins, but for the most part, like I have a client newspaper down in El Paso, Texas. They get approximately 35,000 visitors a day to the site. And if it wasn't for caching, we'd have massive issues. And when I go to do updates, the first thing I have to do is dump the cache, and the cache is huge. And it slows down their site for a couple hours until the caching starts to catch up to it again. But I have to have the caching emptied to do updates, because otherwise I'll update and then people seeing the site could end up with white screens and other issues because the cache is incomplete. But if you're not doing updates or content updates, you don't want to empty the cache unless there's a problem.
Yeah, the cache is supposed to be your friend.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. Most caching's usually supposed to stay solid for 7 days. 7 days or more if you can, but at least 7 days. Any other questions I can help you with? Directions I can point you in? No? All right, well, I'll call it at that point there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonder if we had any. Hey, we had 2 visitors. We had a couple, 3 people
Hey.
online. No messages. But we did have some live traffic today. Oh, got 3 now. Nice. Well, folks, see ya. Have a good one. Appreciate you coming in. Yeah.